Hello and welcome to Challenge to Build. In today's review video, I will be taking a look at ArcCaptain's inverter style welder. This is their stick and DC TIG machine. This is the TIG200. I recently bought their Cut 50 plasma cutter, and after doing a review video on that budget plasma cutter, ArcCaptain as a company reached out to me and then asked me if I would have any interest in reviewing their TIG welder and also their auto darkening welding helmet. I agreed and said that's something that I had interest in. So they sent me this at no cost to me. I am required to disclose that information. However, that will not keep me from giving you an honest review on the equipment. I did a review on the welding helmet recently, and for the price point of this helmet, it's actually a very, very good buy in quality and performance. So I'm kind of excited to get involved and look at their TIG welder. This video is not intended to teach how to TIG weld because I myself am learning how to TIG weld. I've been using my Lincoln Electric 210 MP multi-process machine for probably the past 10 years and just recently started to learn how to TIG weld with it. I have TIG welded in the past. It's just something that I don't do a lot of, but I wanted to get into it more, so I've been teaching myself on that machine. This machine is a lift arc style TIG machine, where this one is a high frequency start. So there is no contaminating the electrode when starting the arc. So I'm kind of really interested to see what the difference between high frequency start and lift arc style TIG is. So that is the premise for this video, starting with the unboxing. Then we'll go into machine setup, and then we will ultimately do some TIG welding later on in this video. So without any more waiting, let's get into the unboxing. So one thing that I did forget to mention in my intro is, even though ArcCaptain did send me the welder and the helmet to me at no cost, one thing with this welder, I classify this as a budget welder. And in my classification, this is just my own opinion, when you hear me say budget welder, to me that is anything that is around $500 or less. So this welder can be had for well under $500. This is, from the research that I did on Amazon, this is one of the cheapest TIG welders that you can buy that has the capability of TIG welding with a foot pedal. ArcCaptain did not send me the foot pedal, so I purchased the foot pedal to go along with this machine separately. Also, one thing that you will need to buy is also to TIG weld, you need to use straight 100% argon. And in order to do so, you will need to buy a regulator for your shielding gas. So I had purchased this a while ago for another review on a different welder. So these two items here, I did buy separately from getting the welder and the helmet. So with that, the first thing to come out of the box is going to be the torch assembly. It looks to be like a 10 to 12 foot torch lead. This is to start the arc. This is not a progressive switch. This is an on or off switch. So this is a WP17 torch, which is actually the same as this one. So I should be able to use some of the consumables that I already have for this torch. So that is a plus. Along with the torch assembly, they give you 3 different size TIG torch cups, a number 5, a number 4, and a number 6, along with the long rooster tail and a stubby rooster tail. I'm pretty sure that's what they're called. Don't hate me if I'm wrong on that. Along with the electrode or tungsten holder, along with 3 different style collets. Let's see what they are. This is a 1/16 inch, an 1/8 inch, and this should be 3/32. Yes, so 3 different size collets with the tungsten holder and 2 different size rooster tails. Along with the torch assembly, we have our shielding gas hose for the back of the machine to the regulator. We have our stinger or electrode holder for stick welding. We also have our adapter, which goes from 110 to 220. We have the grounding clamp, and then last but not least, the TIG welder. And this thing is tiny. Probably weighs 15 pounds. I'll just leave it precariously sitting there, make everybody nervous. Let's see, we have the warranty card, ArcCaptain service at ArcCaptain.com or ArcCaptain.com. And then the user manual, something that I highly recommend you read with any equipment that you buy or use. Definitely spend a few minutes and page through whatever user manual or operating manual you get with your equipment. So, oh, and a strap. So that does it for what's inside the box. I would have to say that the machine is probably about 18 inches long, 6 or 7 inches wide, and maybe 12 inches tall. So it's super compact, and again, super light. It's amazing how much power they can put into these things anymore with the inverter style welder. One thing that I know is consistent with all of ArcCaptain's welding equipment, with the stuff that I have at this point in time, is they wire their stuff at 110 voltage and then adapt it to 220 voltage. And really, there's nothing that you can do about this. I would prefer to see a heavier gauge wire coming out of the machine and have it wired to 220 voltage and then go from 220 to 110. Their plasma cutter is the same way. It's just personal preference. It doesn't mean that it's not going to work, but we will test the limits as far as TIG welding with the adapter on 220. And it's the same sort of thing when it comes to the stinger and also the grounding clamp. I would like to see a little bit heavier wire coming out of the machine for the grounding and also the stick welding electrode holder. But these are things that you kind of have to come to expect when you are working with budget equipment. Not that it's not going to work, but again, depending on how many amps and also the duty cycle of the machine comes into play with how hot these leads are going to get as far as the different type of process in welding. So they make the machine, we expect it to work, and we're going to test that as we continue moving forward in this video. So I'm going to set this stuff aside for a minute. The next thing I'm going to do is open up the foot pedal control. I think one thing that any experienced TIG welder will tell you is that if you are going to learn how to TIG weld, a foot pedal controlled TIG welder is a must. This will allow you to control the amperage from start to finish. So you could ultimately set this at max amperage, but then have full control of the amperage in the foot pedal. I'm kind of interested to see how the trigger control works because this is a high frequency machine. So we will run it in both ways. We will run it with the trigger control, and then also we'll hook up the foot pedal control. Like I said, I did have to buy the foot pedal, which is no big deal. They are reasonably priced. This one is specific for the ArcCaptain TIG welder. You can clearly see that it says ArcCaptain here on the side. This is a 5-pin control pedal, which correlates with this machine. I did actually try to buy another brand foot pedal that was a little bit more compact than this, but it did not work. So I actually bought the right pedal, right? Go figure. It actually works when you buy the right equipment to go with the right machine. So now that I have everything out of the box and unwrapped, what I'm going to do next is get involved in the initial machine setup. I am going to set this up specifically for TIG welding, and once we go through the machine setup and initial power up, we will get involved in doing some TIG welding. All right, so next up is going to be the machine setup, and I am going to start by something simple here. We're going to install the grounding clamp. DC TIG welding, the TIG torch will actually be set up on the negative side of the machine. For the grounding, it's actually kind of counterintuitive, but with the way the polarity works on the machine, we want to set up the grounding clamp on the positive side of the machine. And these are all the things that are discussed in the user manual for the machine. My old boss in construction actually taught me that valuable lesson. We kind of take it for granted, but if you don't know what you're doing, generally the tools or products or whatever it is that you buy will have some kind of how to use or directions on the packaging. So it's up to you to take a few minutes and read to understand what we're doing. Yes. So we are headed in the right direction. So that was pretty simple. The grounding clamp goes on the positive side, and the next piece of equipment to install is going to be the torch. And like I said, we are going to do two different styles of tests. We are going to use the machine with the trigger on the torch, and then we will hook up the pedal to do another test. Let's see here. There we go. Turn to the right, tighten it up. Install the Cannon plug. The Cannon plug can only go on one way. There's a little, I don't know what you would call it, pin that you line up and simply just push it in. Followed that by the gas hose. The gas hose, you do not need to use any kind of Teflon because it is flared, so snug it up with a wrench or an adjustable. Let's see, follow that with the gas hose. I'm going to leave my tank set up on the other welding cart over there. And this hose will have plenty of reach to get over there. And again, this is flared as well. So on the back of the machine, install the gas hose. I'm going to hook this up to the regulator. And then once that is taken care of, it is time to set up the torch. Get it all unwound. So in order to set up the TIG torch, go to the package, and I'm going to use everything that they gave me. I know that my consumables will work from my other torch setup, and I will touch on a few of those aspects when we get involved in actually TIG welding with the pedal. But for now, the first thing that we're going to do is install what they consider to be the diffuser. After the diffuser is installed, you can grab the collet that coincides with the tungsten. They supply one gray tungsten. It's a 1/16 inch tungsten that is supplied with the welder. So we are going to grab the collet that is for the 1/16 inch. We will drop the tungsten holder or collet down in the diffuser. And then for the time being, I will just take the long rooster tail and install that there. Follow that with I'm going to use the largest cup that they give us, which is a number 6, and then screw the cup onto the diffuser, and we should be ready to grind a tip on the tungsten and get to powering up the machine. Now, before we actually get into turning on the machine, I'm going to finish setting up the torch by showing you how you can quickly grind a point on your tungsten. Now, this is where experience comes into play. I am still learning the process behind this. There is actually quite a bit of science behind the correct tungsten, also the correct angle grind. There is all kinds of different variations between a super sharp like pencil point for when you're doing thin sheet metal, and then there is also more of like a blunt point for when you are welding thicker material. Also, the size of the electrode or tungsten, this one being a 1/16 inch, is good for thinner metal, and then the thicker electrodes are more designed for heavier material, because this way here they will introduce and be able to sustain more heat. So in order to grind a point, get yourself a drill, put the tungsten in a drill so you can spin it, and then what you do is, after putting some safety gear on, all I've been doing is taking my angle grinder with a flat disc, turn on the angle grinder, and while it's spinning, hold the trigger, and pretty easily enough, you can put a nice point on your tungsten. Now, there is, like I said, a ton of science behind tungsten and tungsten grinds, and that's the stuff that you will have to do your own due diligence on to learn something about. But even with the grinding marks will play a part in how clean the actual arc is. So lots of information out regarding different methods and different opinions on TIG welding. But for now, for the purpose of this review video, I am going to insert it in the collet. There we go. Push it in, slide it down, and then there's also a ton of different theories as far as tungsten stick out. I'm going for about 3/8 to about 1/2 of an inch of stick out, and that is what I have set up for the purpose of this review. So now the fun part. Getting to turn the machine on for the first time and going through the different parameters within the machine, and then finally getting to do some welding, which I want to do. So for the initial startup, I'm just going to use 110 volts, but for the actual welding, I'm going to switch over to 220 volts. This is a multi-volt system, so it automatically recognizes the voltage with the input and fires right up. You can hear the fan running and moving a good amount of air. It's nice and quiet. I can still remain at my normal tone. And the display is extremely clear, and it's actually pleasing to the eye to look at. So as far as all the functions on the display screen, we have welding mode, preferences, control mode, and then we have our dial here. So this way here we can select the amperage and then use this as like a cursor for the different functions. You can see that up here in the top left-hand corner, it's set to 110 volts, which gives us a max of 140 amps. So pushing the welding mode allows us to switch from, right now it's in TIG 2T, which T stands for touch. Then we can switch it down to TIG 4T, and in the 4T mode, you can see that it wasn't up to the max amperage. Let's see, 10 amps to 140. It's very clean and easy to read. Hitting the weld mode again, we'll switch it to stick welding. With stick welding at 110 volts, they give you a max of 120 amps. So for now, we're going to switch it to TIG2T. In the preference mode, hitting the preferences, it gives us the ability to select the downslope. Now the downslope is really going to come into play using the trigger on the torch. This lessens the amperage when you let off the trigger at the end of your TIG weld. So let's see, downslope. Post gas flow is adjustable from 0 to 10 seconds as well. This is going to be how often or how long the gas runs when letting go of the trigger to cool and clean the weld after welding. Post gas and current, so then this allows us to adjust the current. Coming over to the control mode, hitting the control mode, it goes from panel to remote. So this is going to come into play when we hook up the foot pedal. I'm going to say that once we hook up the foot pedal, we are going to have to go from panel to remote, but very simple and intuitive on the display. Not a lot of buttons, not a lot of things to adjust. So super clean, super easy. And with that, I am going to get some material set up and get to TIG welding. All right, so we finally made it to the point of the video where I want to be, and I'm sure you want to be also, and that is to finally test out the capabilities with the actual TIG welding function. For this review and for the first attempt at TIG welding with this, I'm using 1/8 inch wall material. So that's going to be right around 11 gauge. Pro tip or beginner tip, depending on how you want to look at it, is when it comes to TIG welding is a process that requires cleanliness. So the cleaner the environment and the cleaner the material, the overall better experience and better weld quality you will achieve. So, you know, all of the mill scale and rust, this would be fine for stick welding, but when it comes to TIG welding, you want to take your time, clean everything up with a grinding wheel, a flap disc, belt sander, whatever tools you have available. Also, you could go as far as getting some acetone and actual cleaning the material before welding. I'm not going to do that for this particular portion of the video. Another pro tip is never, and I repeat, never clean your material or electrode with chlorinated cleaner. The gas that is emitted off of that, if you decide to strike an arc on chlorinated cleaned material, releases a very toxic gas and could be extremely, not could be, but is extremely harmful to you and your lungs. So never, I repeat again, never use chlorinated cleaner to clean your parts. A lot of people just use acetone. I have the machine hooked up to 220 voltage, so I'm going to go ahead and turn on my machine. I did turn on my gas regulator and I am flowing about 20 CFMs of gas. I have my welding helmet that ArcCaptain was nice enough to supply as well. And you're definitely going to want to use some gloves. So here we go. I'm kind of nervous, but here we go. I'm using my permanent magnet chuck to clamp the material. And I'm going to leave about a 1/16 inch between the pieces. Turn on my magnet. That will hold my pieces. So the difference between TIG welding with a switch compared to TIG welding with a pedal is I could set this machine up to run full amperage and have full control with the foot pedal. Now with the trigger switch, you need to set the amperage as close to the material thickness as you are welding. So for the 1/8 inch material, I'm going to drop this down to about 80 amps. And also in the preferences, I'm actually going to run 75 amps. We're set up in the 2T, and I'm going to go into the preferences, and I'm going to set my downslope at 3 seconds. Now we'll come up to 5 seconds. I've never welded with the downslope feature, so we're going to go to a 5 seconds. We're going to split the difference, and we're going to go post flow of about 3 seconds. So Here goes nothing. I got my ground clamp. I need my filler rod. Filler rod would be another thing you're gonna need too. I am using 70S6, and I am still learning how to hold it and control it. These are all the things that I am trying to learn with TIG welding. So don't make fun of me. I'm nervous. All right, first weld with the TIG200 from ArcCaptain, welding 1/8 inch material using the trigger. And this is a high frequency start, which I almost forgot. Here goes nothing. All right, now that I solved the grounding issue, I'm a dummy. I have my permanent magnet chuck isolated on rubber mats to keep it from sliding. And I did this yesterday and I'm still learning. But that scared me because I was like, the machine's not working, what the heck is going on? So I just quickly went through all my connections and then realized that my grounding clamp was on the table, but because of the isolation between the permanent magnet chuck and the table, it wasn't working. So that's completely on me, and I'm a dummy. But let's try this again. Okay. First TIG weld with the ArcCaptain TIG200, take 2. That is really smooth. I like that a lot. And it looks freaking amazing. I feel like an idiot though. Ugh. Absolute freaking bonehead. Bonehead move. But you live and learn. Let's do that again. I'm actually going to lower my downslope a little bit. All right. Here we go. I'll be honest, I'm having really a nice time welding with the trigger and the downslope. Whereas if you're a beginner TIG welder this way here, you only have to really worry about 2 things at once, holding and starting the arc and then feeding the wire. And then the third thing would be the foot pedal control. So rather than doing 3 things at once, using the foot pedal, kind of narrowing down what you need to do with just 2 functions really helps with the initial start of learning how to TIG weld. So I really, really like how this is going, and I really, really like the quality that I'm able to produce with not having that much experience with the overall process. This is awesome. I love it. The high frequency start compared to a lift arc style TIG is absolutely amazing. And considering that I am a newbie to TIG welding still, this machine is making it look really, really easy, minus my little mess up with the ground. I won't live that one down. That high frequency start, that is the cat's meow. If you are looking to learn how to TIG weld, get yourself one of these. I could really get used to that. Awesome. So considering a few variables within this video, the first being during the final TIG welds with the TIG200, I ran out of argon. My argon is now empty, and of course, that's just normally the way it goes. When you get involved in a project, you either run out of welding wire, or in this case, shielding gas. Two, the length of this video is a little bit longer than I had hoped, but I did cover quite a bit of material within this video. And honestly, with the way that this machine is working, with the trigger setup and the downslope in the welds that I'm producing, hopefully I can convey that in my video, but I am actually really enjoying the ability to weld with this machine, just simply tooling around here in the garage today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the review and unboxing video here today. I will make a secondary video with the foot pedal, and then ultimately getting into a little bit heavier material. There are a few things that I would like to discuss about the torch when it comes to consumables. I think if you are in the market for a budget TIG welder to learn how to TIG weld, then you found the machine that will fulfill your needs. So look no farther than the ArcCaptain TIG200. I again want to thank ArcCaptain for sending me the welder and the helmet, both of which exceed my expectations. And with that, you all need to go out and challenge your build, buy yourself a welder, and then get out there and go build something cool. So thank you for watching. I will see you in an upcoming video and/or review.